we also talk about, in fact, we've used these values to underpin the platform. It's a bit of an algorithm that I use as well, is that it starts, number one, with transparency, right? So once you've defined your purpose, then you really do need to look at yourself and get your own version of your truth first, right? You've got to say, okay, where are we? Where are we? Where's our footprint? Where can we make the biggest difference? Where are we today? And where are our risks and where are opportunities, right? So it starts with that level of transparency. Once you get that, it unlocks, I believe, trust. And once you unlock trust with your different stakeholders, then you unlock partnership. Because what we don't want to also see is businesses trying to be like charities, or charities trying to be like governments, or governments trying to be like businesses, right? Actually, we've all got our part to play, and we've all got to play to our strengths. And so we really feel like the SDGs again is a universal framework that allows us to all play to our strengths collectively in partnership. Yeah. And then from
Goal 17 is exactly that. It's about partnering in new ways, radically different ways.
And then from there you achieve the most holistic outcomes, so that's kind of my mantra, really. And we've underpinned the values of transparency to unlock trust to unlock partnership to unlock the most holistic outcomes. And so and then so if you get there, you go, okay, right, I've worked out my purpose, we've made some goals now that we're going to target, and we've realized what we're going to do as a business. I want to talk about measurement now, because I think this is then where things also come off the rails a little bit, because I think people can get to making statements saying, on their sustainability report or their website or their press releases or whatever, and then measuring, you used a really good word, accountability towards then the targets that you've set. And when I've been talking to a lot of the investor community, who, as you know, are now, this is a huge topic for them, right? So they are wanting to know probably more the sustainability credentials of a company than its financial credentials right now. They really want to understand that at depth. And when we're speaking to them, they were saying that actually the data that they get is mainly like ESG ratings, right? Is a company good, bad, not so good? And there's quite a discrepancy between same company, one's getting a D from somewhere, one's getting an A++, and there's this huge kind of divide going on at the moment. And so this is the feedback I've received from them, is to say, well, actually what we want as investors, and I think all stakeholders want for decision making, is impact measurement, right? We wanted to know, if we invest in this product or this solution or this company or this project, are we going to move the dial from here to here in that strategy? Tell me what your views are on this whole thing around measuring and tracking performance against those targets.
Okay, there's I agree with everything you've said. So not anything there really to dispute. I would say to you though that I like your reflection on purpose, and I started trying to explain that in many ways materiality, what you're asking yourself is, why do you exist? At your very core, why am I here? What do I do? And where do I have an impact? I mean, that's your starting point. And as you rightly say, then once you understand what that is, then you can express that in ways that make sense to you and feel relevant and authentic and not just kind of manufactured. Then it's about, well, what impact do I think I can have, and then how do I quantify that in real terms, in measurable terms?
Yes.
And as I was trying to allude, in some spaces there's a lot of the data and the modeling and the analytics and the data gathering is so much more sophisticated, and that's because we've spent a lot of time, particularly over the last decade or more, in the environmental area at being very astute, well, not astute, but it's become kind of common. There are common frameworks around which most companies are working, and so it's easier. The place that's more difficult is in this social pillar, as you start to talk about, what does it truly mean to, treat people fairly, or when you start to look at being a diverse business, what does that mean, and what kind of metrics can you apply? And in fact, do those metrics in many ways have perverse effects and actually drive things that you don't want to happen into the business? And so that's a place which is fast evolving, and there's still quite a lot of variance and differences between what companies report, how they report it. And indeed, as you say, there are multiple indices out there at the moment on which people are assessed. And actually, what I think is going to happen over time is some degree of consolidation. I just think it's just a natural trend.
Agreed.
Is that we're just going to have to see some form of consolidation of the data and the systems that, the scoring and the methodologies have to start to become more consistent, more coherent, more benchmarkable, so that you can actually compare apples with apples and not be comparing very different businesses based on completely different metrics and trying to make sense of it, because that's a little bit of where we are when we look at some of this. So what you're doing is you're getting a lot of indicative data. You're not getting, it's indicative of intent, or it's indicative of direction of travel, but it's not robust in the same way that your financial data would be. And it's not necessarily comparable because you're not using the same methodology for calculating it. And so that's why it gets a little bit more difficult to do. But for saying all of it, I think, and all of that, I think it is clear that the solution often then comes back to how have you built trust with that community of investors? And that comes back to transparency, because what the investors are looking for is data, but they also just want transparent access to information. And at the heart of it is, do they believe that they can trust you? Because it's so hard to form an opinion based on all of the various multiple indicators. At the end of the day, it is about a trusted relationship, and so I think some of that's built through dialogue and interaction, which is what we're spending more time doing now. And but some of it will, over time, mature. I mean, we're just going to be much more mature about this. I think there's probably a period of another 5 or 10 years before we'll have a truly mature system, but nevertheless, we're on the journey towards that more integrated and mature reporting and measurement systems being implemented. What I talk a lot about is this currency of trust, because every company, it doesn't matter which company you're talking about, will do certain things well and other things less well. It will be a leader in certain areas, and it will, in some cases, potentially be a laggard in others. It's not. There's no universal you can't outperform on every metric on everything. No. And I think this is one of the other challenges that we all face, which is that often you're sort of judged on the thing that you've been poorest at, and not necessarily at the thing that all the other things that actually you're doing well. The bias is still towards the
naming and shaming.
And so how do you frame this over time so people understand that and every company faces its challenges. Every company will do things well and some things less well.
Right.
It's about consistency, and it's about how that company seeks to find resolution to those issues, and what systems and governance does it have in place, which is why it is an ESG conversation. It's about what are you doing to de-risk that, reduce the risk that happens, and then what actions are you taking, what governance and oversight instruments do you have in place and mechanisms do you have in place, so if something happens, you're actually addressing it in the most responsible way. And I think that's really important, because otherwise you get driven a lot by headlines. It's happened, and that automatically all your scores drop. And in some ways it's a kind of a blunderbuss. it's not always a great way necessarily of judging an overall performance.